Hey folks, Craig Hlavaty here with the Houston Museum of Natural Science. We are having, this is a special edition of the Beyond Bones podcast. It's sort of like a, what do you call
bonus
it? Like
content.
A supplemental
Sure,
content,
supplemental
I guess.
work.
And me and Kat,
Hey
here,
there,
right there, somewhere up there.
over here.
We are joined today by VP of Education, Nicole Temple. Now, Nicole has been very busy this week. You've been, you're the murder hornet expert for the Houston Museum of Natural Science, it feels like. You've been on plenty of outlets here locally, 11, 13, 39, 76, 84, 32.
All the numbers.
Everything. And so we're doing this special little episode talking about murder hornets. Explain to me what a murder hornet is for the people listening around here.
Okay, so you know how we have killer bees?
Yes.
Somebody thought it would be funny to have murder hornets. That is not actually their name. They just were
Exactly.
play on words. And killer bees are not killer. They're just slightly more aggressive when you bother them. So it's kind of the same thing.
But don't murder hornets actually murder the bees by tearing off their heads?
They do. So do you want me to talk about the mechanics of how these giant hornets work? It's gross.
I want to know, like, if you can't, like, how did this happen? Like, how did this story arise? Do you know anything about that? Was it just one of those things that a lazy reporter just decided to make this a thing? Or was it something taken wildly out of context from a science journal? How did this happen?
The first time I saw it was like on some internet thing, like a meme where they're talking about like, not now, we don't have time for murder hornets.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I was like, oh, we've got some of those at the museum. And that's how I got involved, because we've got an entire entomology center, but because I was the co-curator of Death by Natural Causes, we just happened to have some on display. So like we knew about these things before they were cool.
So we have some on display in the museum. So people have already probably had, you'd have to notice them, quite honestly. They're not very big in the scheme of things at Death by Natural Causes. So you'd have to sort of remember it by detail. And being the curator, that's you. So
that's me. So if you've been to Death by Natural Causes and you get to the animal section, when you go from where the snakes and reptiles and amphibians are to where the invertebrates and the 12 most deadly animals are, it's down that hallway. And do I just happen to have a picture of them that I can show you? Yes, I do. Oh. So this is from the exhibit.
Okay.
And this is just a little cluster of them. There's 6 of them here, and there were probably a dozen that come in a hive. And just to give you a little bit closer up, there they are. They're just so big. And for me, because I am switching back.
You're back.
Okay. Because I am pretty tall for a woman, I have pretty reasonably large hands, and they take up from the second joint to the tip of my finger on me.
So like an inch and a half?
Yeah, I would say it's probably 2 inches. You know what? Do I happen to have a ruler right here?
Of course you do.
I would say, yeah, inch and a half. Nope, closer to 2.5 inches.
Oh.
They're pretty big, and like the ones that we have they're big, but they're not the largest ones that ever existed. On a man, they probably are about the same length as a pinky, about the same size as a pinky. And they are mean because they have both piercing and biting mouth parts, but they also have a stinger that's between a quarter and a half an inch long.
Then I'm assuming they have venom then.
Mm-hmm. And their venom is, it's weird. Their venom is fairly toxic. It causes or can cause renal failure. If you get like 12 stings as a reasonably sized human adult, you're going to need to seek medical attention. Like you will need medical attention. And after 50 stings, there's no coming back. Like, we're done with you. Thank you for playing. But most of the sting related deaths that happen in Japan are because of anaphylaxis, and they have about 50 every year. And we have far more than that with killer bees, or not killer bees, with European honeybees or hybridized bees in the United States. So these are not any worse than any of the other hymenoptera we encounter.
So anything like that bites you multiple times, it's going to cause trouble.
Yeah, with invertebrates. Yeah. And so like hornets can sting multiple times, but bees, when they sting, they have a barbed stinger and it actually pulls out their intestines, so they only get one shot. But these guys can sting multiple times. And then they also have these giant biting, piercing mandibles. And that's what they use to rip off the bee heads when they get into a hive. So if it was to bite you, it would hurt because they're just little scissors.
Like a crab, or more scissory?
More scissory just because they're smaller, and like a crab, like if you've ever been bitten by a turtle.
I have been.
Yes.
As a matter of fact.
Yeah. So you know how it hurts because it's pinchy, but it also is, the beak is thin enough that it can break the skin and slice you. It's more like that.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Now, what's the function of bees? Why do they exist? What function do they have in nature?
Well, they're carnivores, and they also other things feed on them. So there's a hierarchy of the food pyramid, and because they are flying insects, they can do pollination. They just generally have other things that are more adept at this.
Okay.
And they normally in Japan or in Asia, they would feed on the Japanese honeybees, like the native species that are there. When they go into a hive, if you've ever seen a bee box, it's like a one that you would have in your house or one that you would have commercially for like pollinating fields. They are these white boxes that stack, and there's like a little slit at the bottom. So even if you're living up here as a bee, you still have to come to the bottom to get out, and then you fly up. So these guys go in that little slit at the bottom, and then within a matter of an hour or two, they can decimate the hive, and they rip off the workers' heads and like throw them away. And then once the hive is dead, they can go back and they take the pupa that's in the little combs, and that's what they eat and what they feed their young. So it's very detrimental to the European honeybees that they have in Japan. But the native Japanese bees have figured out like how to solve this problem. And when the hornet goes in, the bees like swarm the hornet. And even if they sting it, it doesn't really do much. So what they've learned to do instead is when the hornet goes in there, they swarm on top of it, and then they start vibrating their wings, and they heat up the air around the hornet with so much energy, and they decrease the oxygen, so there's more CO2 in there, so that the hornet actually is cooked alive, suffocates and is cooked alive.
Nice.
And then as soon as the hornet is dead, they all have to like scatter and disperse, because the differential in temperature between cooking the hornet and cooking the bees is really slim. So they have to get out of there and go cool off and just sort of back away. And then when everything's okay, they will all get together and like drag that hornet out of there.
Sounds like a superhero fight almost, like some sort of.
Well, yeah, but the European honeybees don't know that trick. They don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So
They're a lot more passive too, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what do we have to worry about here in Texas stateside?
Currently, you don't really have to worry about anything. So they've only found a couple of them. They saw them at the end of 2019, and they've sort of been keeping track. And it happened in Washington, where apparently all terrible things on the West Coast start. Yeah, I'm like, gosh, you guys just can't catch a break. So they're keeping track of it, but when fire ants came to the United States, they actually tracked them back, and they came inside of a rubber tire, and there was a nest inside of there when they came from South America. And then it took like 40 years or 20 years or something like that for them to get to Texas, and now it's taken them another 20 years for them to get up north. So if they were coming, it would take a long time. The concern is if they do spread, And if we do have some kind of problem happening here, we've got to get it taken care of because our poor little beleaguered honeybees don't need any more problems.
Yeah.
So they could travel like just by basic, like you said, like the tires, how the fire ants traveled. Could these hornets travel here somehow that way?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you noticed, but they do have
They
wings.
have wings.
Well, I didn't know if they could travel that far. Like, or if you're a hornet in Seattle, how long does it take you to get to Houston?
It's small jumps.
I am out of high school, so I don't have to do the 2 trains math grade. It'll take a while because they'll travel slowly.
But they'll move incrementally, right? Like it's not like
yeah.
it's not like they're gonna get on a plane or like a Hornet plane and get here directly. It's not. They'll take their time getting here.
Yeah.
Hornet
Air.
There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, they will be incremental before they get here. So we have time to try and eradicate the problem. And the way that they're keeping track of it is really pretty interesting. So scientists that study these things and they're trying to figure out their behavior. They can find the hives or find these clusters or these nests in a couple different ways. One of which is they're so large, they put out their own heat signature, and they live in pretty small groups of like 10 to 12, maybe 15 individuals, but they cluster together and they live at the base of trees and like little hollows. So you can take a heat gun and sort of scan the area and you can find these pockets of heat so they can like find the nest that way. And then the other way that they've been working on it is you can actually catch them because they're that big, and you can put a teeny little radio tracking collar on them, and then you can figure out where they live that way and how far they're traveling, what areas they're covering, sort of they're contact tracing these hornets.
Got it.
Hey, that's a great comparison. I think what Craig was trying to ask though, and it's actually an interesting question, is like, okay, so clearly they didn't fly here from Japan. Did they come in with a shipment?
They don't
know. Yeah.
They don't know. I don't know.
They don't know, but when every time you travel internationally or you go to Hawaii even, they will say, do you have any fruits and vegetables? Do you have any dirt? Do you have any whatever? And everybody's like, God, this is the dumbest. This is the reason why they ask.
That's a giant stowaway.
Yeah. So they want to make sure that whatever you're bringing back, you are not bringing it back.
Or even what you bring there.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to, because I guess this is one of those things. We have a lot of invasive species, obviously, even here in Houston. You have things that aren't supposed to be here, but they're here. I guess this is definitely one of the more scary invasive species out there. Yeah,
and it's sort of like it's the media darling right now.
Yes, it is. Yes.
We've talked about dinosaurs downstairs, and I would personally say, and I think Kat would agree with me, that T-Rex is by far not the coolest dinosaur. He's not the biggest. He's not the meanest, but he had the best PR agent. And this is a little bit of what's happening right here with this guy. So,
he's kind of like the Macaulay Culkin of dinosaurs.
Yeah. Let me show you.
Go ahead.
Another critter. So this one is, can you see him?
Yeah.
So this is actually a tarantula hawk wasp.
Tasty.
Tarantula hawk wasp. We also have something called cicada killers, which are in the same family, but a little bit different. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can show you my little diagram. This is the same thing. It's just smaller and it's not unfurled, if you will. And then this is a little tarantula. These guys will fight with the tarantulas. They will fly over and start bothering the tarantula, and the tarantula will flip over on its back, trying to use its legs, you would fight with your brother or sister when you were kids. And then the tarantula, or the hawk wasp, actually continues to try and get it back on its stomach and right it. And once it finally gets it so it's right side up, it pins it down, and it will envenomate the spider, and it will basically paralyze it so it can't move, but it is still alive. Then it takes it, and you'll see them we've seen them at the ranch where they drag them across the ground, pulling one little leg at a time. They get them over to their hollow in the ground. They stick them in their little nest, and then the hawk wasp will lay eggs inside this living
I knew you were
spider.
going to say that. I knew it.
So that
Wow.
so the spider's totally alive. These eggs are growing inside of it. So when the babies hatch, they have something to eat. That is equally as terrifying as the thing we just talked about. This is a native species. It lives here already.
It's already taken a residence here. It's already getting it's already getting its mail here. It's here.
Hang on. It's keeping it alive as sort of a way of food preservation. So sort of instead of a refrigerator, it's keeping it alive so it can be eaten.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
We have just a few minutes left here. Is there anything that we should be worried about more bug-wise here in Houston for those listening to watching this right now? Is there anything you actually should be scared of? First off, before you're scared of a murder hornet.
Yes. Do you know the number one killer of humans? The number one animal killer of humans, I should say.
It's mosquitoes, right?
Mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Yes. So dump out your standing water.
Yeah.
Get some citronella plants, because you are far more likely to die of some bloodborne pathogen that is given to you by a mosquito than anything else. Mm-hmm. And also, we now have assassin bugs in Texas that are carrying Chagas disease. Stray bands of dogs are coming up with Chagas, and they're now when you go get blood, they're checking your blood for Chagas. And that's a weird thing because it gives you like minor flu symptoms, but then like 20 years later, it like gives you crippling heart disease and then you die.
And we've heard zero about that to speak of.
We already have plenty of problems. We don't need any more.
Yeah.
What you're telling me is I don't need any extra toilet paper for the murder wasps.
No, you do not need any extra toilet paper.
I do not need to get any more toilet paper. Great.
Well, and the other thing is those murder wasps are aggressive. So it's the same thing with the quote unquote killer bees, which are just hybridized. If you're not bothering them, they will not bother you. If you start bothering them or you make them feel threatened, they will come after you until you are no longer a problem.
So okay, Craig, stop bothering people. I mean, bees.
That's everybody just stay on your own lane.
Yeah.
Stop bothering nature.
Okay. All right, so that's great. That's great. Thank you for giving us sort of the I guess the calm down speech for the murder hornets here. You've done a great job this week of talking to the media about this, and I'm glad that we have your face out there to give people the lowdown on these things, so they're not too terribly scared. Hopefully, you guys aren't having bad dreams about murder hornets, and and I'm excited for the museum to reopen so people can see these murder hornets on the wall of death by natural causes.
Me too.
So, all right, folks, thank you for listening and or watching. Nicole Temple, VP of Education at the Houston Museum of Natural Science, and Kat Havens, somewhere up there.
Over here.
Over there, wherever you are. And I was Craig Hlavaty, and thanks for watching.
All right, thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.